Can I ask you your name and where you're from? What seat did you sit in?
I'm Lilah Mansour, and I was sitting in the Caribou Prince George seat.
Okay, from BC.
From BC, yes.
And you are, and what seat did you sit in?
I'm Deanna, Allain. I was representing Hamilton Mountain in Ontario.
Okay. And you are, and where did you sit?
I'm Yesno, and I was sitting in University Rosedale.
I'm going to start with a simple question. What brought you here? What was the most important thing for you here?
So for me, I really wanted to hear the opinions of all the women from across Canada, and I wanted to have my voice also be heard, and I really wanted to really emphasize diversity, especially different minorities, especially immigrants and refugees, and really stand with immigrants and refugees, especially on that topic.
You spoke about Islamophobia too,
Yes.
about combating Islamophobia.
Exactly, and that's definitely one issue definitely facing immigrants and refugees especially, and I definitely want my voice to be heard.
Deanna, what brought you here and what's important for you?
I'm really passionate about grassroots organizing and community building. I found that this opportunity with Equal Voice was a great way to meet intersectional feminists across the country and build coalitions.
And what brought you here?
It was twofold. One was that I really wanted to be in a room with 337 other women. That I knew would be empowering the second I saw the program. But I think more importantly, it was to reclaim space as an Indigenous woman that I was never supposed to be in. And that was really profound for me, and to do that with other Indigenous people from across the country.
I'm going to ask you about the current, you come here to Ottawa in a very special time, and it was reflected even when the Prime Minister stood up in the House. People turned their backs on him. The estimate is maybe up to 40 young women turned their backs on him. There were very tough questions to him. He referred to it. He's just expelled two very strong, competent women who are ministers who stepped down, and now he's expelled them from caucus. What do you make of all of this?
You know, it's definitely a time of political turmoil, and I think it's very important that we stand in unity with each other, and that we hear each other and we hear each other's problems, and that we address these problems. It's tough to directly address this problem and specifically comment on it, and I leave that for my colleagues.
Okay. What do you make of it? Who wants to weigh in on this one?
Or we're talking about Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott especially. I think it's ridiculous, to be quite frank. I had heard the murmurs earlier this week, of course, that they could be kicked out or expelled from caucus. And just knowing what sort of messages that sends to me, but also more importantly to other Indigenous people all across the nation, what it speaks to in terms of feminism and reconciliation and these nation-to-nation dialogues that the Liberal government likes to tout. I don't think it sends a good message.
The Prime Minister referred, as you mentioned, the Prime Minister referred specifically to both of those women in his speech. He also referred to solidarity, to trust. He talked about diversity, and he says you only achieve diversity or fight for diversity if you have people you can trust, sort of making a reference to the situation. What do you make of this situation?
Well, I would call to question, based on his actions on this, whether or not we as Canadians trust him. I think that, I think I speak for a number of delegates when I say we had Jody Wilson-Raybould actually visited us a couple of days ago, and we had a lineup of people that were eager to meet her, take pictures with her, thank her for her courage and her honesty and for sticking to the truth, which it's not just her truth, it is the truth. And I think that seeing what took place, hearing on the news, showing as much solidarity as we could, we're showing that it doesn't really matter what the Prime Minister says or what caucus might say. We stand with Jody and Jane.
I think too, Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott were highly revered in the positions that they held. They did excellent work, and I've had actually the opportunity to meet both of them before on a number of occasions, and they impressed me immensely. And so when you have those two powerful, competent women turn to you and say, there's something seriously wrong here, and your response is to kick them out as opposed to turn inwards and say, what responsibility do I bear in this situation? Is there a problem? How do we address it? That says to me that the government cares more about maintaining power than it does about accountability and good governance.
Lilah, what do you make of this? I'm going to poke and prod to see what you make of it.
No,
I mean, when the Prime Minister argues you're not going to achieve any of the things you need to achieve, he even mentioned diversity, if you don't have a team that sticks with you and plays like a team and are team players, and he says this is all the way it is.
No, I definitely agree with what my other wonderful women have said beside me, and it was amazing to see Jody stand her ground and say her opinion and to stand by what she had said, and to see her kind of pushed away is very disappointing, especially in the current political atmosphere.
Well, here's a question then. Does it put you off politics? Does it put you off the Liberal Party, the Prime Minister?
No, absolutely. I think this is an opportunity for us to voice our opinions now and for us to be heard. And, with all this turmoil, I think it's time for us to speak up and voice our opinions.
Does it put you off politics, or does it put you off the Liberal Party or the government that's in power right now?
Well, I mean, it is an election year, and one of the things that I think we saw today in the House when we claimed that space was that it's our space and it's also our government, because we are, we claim that space today. And so when we walked out, when we turned our backs, we showed exactly what we saw, that was wrong, and we also showed that we as women can build those coalitions and we can form those leadership positions.
What about when the Prime Minister says, and I know you raise the issue of Indigenous rights and the murdered and missing Indigenous women, what about when the Prime Minister says, this is a progressive government, and if you don't support me, you may get a less progressive government?
That's called fear-mongering, by definition. I think that if you really want to be a progressive government, you should aim to be a champion rather than a vote of harm reduction, or the lesser of evils.
Does it change your opinion in terms of whether you can support this government?
I think before I even entered this space, I kind of held a mentality that I don't know that whatever government, be it the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, or the Green, really are they're colonial parties in a colonial system, and I don't know that that will ever fully represent my needs as an Indigenous woman and my community's needs. So.
Well, listen, I want to thank all three of you. You've obviously brought a lot to this place, and I want to thank you for speaking with me and sharing your thoughts. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.